Jesus 911.
Let Jesus be your first responder. Welcome to Jesus 911, two retired LA cops. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we focus on spiritual warfare. Eddie, how you doing this morning? Are you reporting for duty?
I am reporting for duty, sir. How are you? Good morning.
Eddie, we got a great show today. Again, when we worked the streets of Los Angeles, Southern California, we saw a lot of people that were spiritually afflicted, and back then we probably didn't know what we were dealing with because we weren't taught in the academy. I remember, Eddie, I was taught when somebody acts a little bit nutty, we would just say, he's a 5150, okay? He's a 918, which means they're crazy, put handcuffs on them and take them to the psych ward, and that's it.
That's right.
But as time passed on, Eddie, I've realized that not everybody is a lunatic out there. There's some people out there that are spiritually afflicted. And so we have a special guest on the show today. His name is Kyle Clement. Eddie, you've met him before. Where did you meet Kyle at?
Yeah, Kyle, before the show, I was just beginning to tell you, I met you once in an elevator at the conference in Los Angeles a few years ago, so I just wanted to say hello to you again. How are you?
He was one of the presenters, right?
Yes.
Well, great. I'm glad to connect with you again, Eddie.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The Kyle Clement is one of the founders of the Liber Christo Institute. It's a Catholic institute on healing, deliverance, and exorcism. And Kyle's also one of the founding members of the Pope Leo XIII Institute in Mundelein in Chicago, Illinois. He's Father Ripperger's right-hand man. Literally, you got Batman and Robin. You have the Lone Ranger and Tonto. Kyle is his right-hand man, and he's been working with him for over 10 years.
We have a good show today, Kyle. We're gonna introduce some questions that were written to Jess by somebody, and I think we could base our show on those questions and then add on to that. I think we're going to really touch people that are involved in this ministry, people considering to be involved in this kind of ministry. So we're gonna take a lead from you here in a minute.
Yeah, we want to go through the do's and don'ts. Kyle, there's a lot of well-intentioned Catholics out there that want to be involved in a healing ministry within the Catholic Church. So the first question is, what healing ministry is there for those people? What would you recommend to them? I mean, you don't have to be formally part of some team. Anybody could be involved in praying intercession for somebody else, but that's the first question. What healing ministry is there for those people that want to be involved in this life of the church?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I think you're absolutely right, Jesse, that there is a world of well-intentioned people, but no good deed goes unpunished, meaning that the adversary will watch and use your good intentions against you. And so as we deal with a very, very large data set and watch patterns of how people get taken out and where they are susceptible, then I think that, a battlefield analogy may help. You've got a comrade who's wounded on the battleground, on the battlefield. Do you immediately run out there? No. Prudence dictates that you see where the enemy opposition will be. You see what the situation is. You have your, it's a term you guys will know. You got your head on a swivel. Situational awareness, I think, is really, really important in anything that we do. And the first situation is, if I extend ministry to this person, if I extend myself to this person, is that the charitable thing to do? And boy, this is a thing that really hamstrings a lot of us in this ministry, and that is this. If they're experiencing extraordinary diabolical affliction, or even ordinary diabolical affliction or resistance, then that's happening providentially. God's aware of it. Nothing happens that God is not aware of. If he's aware of it, then it has a salvific purpose. So perhaps the difficulty that Bob's going through because he lost his job and his wife left him, ultimately this is happening to bring him to a deeper place in faith, to bring him to a place where not only does he repair his marriage, but he repairs the sacrament. Because grace flows through sacrament. This is a Catholic understanding that we've lost, and it is to maintain the constructs of sacrament, marriage, priestly orders, religious orders, to maintain these constructs of vocation. I think that's the overarching thing. So short answer to your question, I lost the opportunity to give you a short answer, but the short answer to your question is, first and foremost, does this honor my vocation? Is my wife or my husband behind this effort? And do I extend ministry to this person while neglecting my children or my other obligations? I think that's the first question we have to ask ourselves.
Makes sense.
Perfect information. Yeah, and you know what? I know certain people, several people actually, that were asked to participate in something similar to what you're speaking of here, this ministry, and essentially they were able to judge their own personal circumstance and say this is not quite the right time for this. You know, I have son or daughter, et cetera, in a problem, so we're going to avoid this at this point. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that, Kyle. That's great.
Kyle, I've got a question for you. I'm looking here, and we're not saying this to be critical. We're just saying this because we want to help people do the right thing as Catholic Christians. Eddie and me consider ourselves first responders, and we want to give people the proper response to a lot of these questions that they ask, and they deserve a Catholic response. I'm looking at my Unbound because I went through the course as well. And one of the things that, in fact, I even folded the page years ago. It's on, and would like you to comment on page 54 where it says key number 4, the fourth key, the command. It says it's instructing the layperson. It says say firmly with authority while placing your hand on the person's head, and then it instructs you to do an imprecatory prayer. So my question is, because I heard Dan Schneider and some other presenters talking about that there can be a danger when one lay Catholic who doesn't have authority over another lay Catholic, when he raises his right hand, which is a priestly position in the Old and New Testament, when you as a lay Catholic raise your right hand and touch another lay Catholic that you have no authority over, and you're doing imprecatory prayers, commanding the spirits to leave in the name of Jesus, why is this dangerous? This seems to be what's being taught here in Unbound in key number 4. Why would you say, from a Catholic point of view, this would be dangerous?
Well, it's a great question, and it takes us right to the point of contention, is the fourth key, use of imprecatory prayer. And I think that to get take the 30,000-foot flyover look, just get a quick look at this whole thing, is the understanding that starting with the Council of Carthage in 398 AD, the Catholic Church began to reserve certain powers, postures, and practices to the priesthood. That's the ordained priesthood. And so it was the understanding that these particular postures in prayer were reserved. And that has been, it's got 15 centuries of tradition. One of the things that our Protestant brethren and others forget very quickly is that we as Catholics, everything we do has to not only adhere to doctrine and dogma, but it has to meet the sensum fidei, the sense of faith. What is the tradition? What has the church said about this? What have they always said about this? The church learns and changes microscopically, not drastically, not radically, but it doesn't depart a particular doctrine or practice. In observing people who are involved in this ministry over the years, you got to remember that Unbound is a 10-year-old weapon system. And so any 10-year-old weapon system, the other side is going to have figured out the weak spots in it, figured out how to exploit it, figure out how to counterattack, if you will, the practitioners. So we're looking at a aged weapon system that does not match tradition, that is not proven over the centuries. And so with that in mind, the imprecatory prayer is reserved to the priesthood. The laying on of hands is reserved to the priesthood. Our Protestant brethren and many modern Catholics discard 15 centuries of battle wisdom when they say it's okay for you to do that. And when they make the statement that power and authority are synonymous, this is simply incorrect.
Break that down, power and authority.
Okay, power and authority. The power means that when you lay your hands on somebody and you raise your hand as a baptized Christian and say, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command this demon to depart, The demon will yield because you have the power. What you don't have is the authority, meaning you are not designated by the church as a priest. You are not ordained. And a bishop can't give you, as a layperson, the authority to do a priestly practice, no more than he can give you the authority to consecrate. And so power and authority are very clearly delineated over some 20 centuries of Catholicism and how we see it work. And it's amazing. This area is functional theology. The demon will either yield or he won't. He's not interested in having a debate with you. And so what it amounts to, this is spiritual warfare, not spiritual negotiation. So what it amounts to is when you command, the demon will honor your command. However, because you do not have the authority, now you are personally open to counterattack. And what we see as counterattack or reprisal is, of the people who practice this, look at the wreckage that is their families and their marriages. The demon comes specifically against them in their vocation. This ministry has been the cause of many separations. It's been the cause of many families and children apostate away from the faith. And so the demon is going to retaliate against the weakest portion or the weakest aspect of your person. And that may be your vocation, it may be your family, but we see the retaliation over and over and over again. So just from a practical standpoint, not agenda-driven, just watching. Power is not synonymous with authority. When you are an LA policeman, and if you stop me and we're in Arizona, you better have some jurisdiction, something that gives you authority, because though you got the badge and the gun, you have no authority. Mm-hmm. And most people will just say, oh, well, I'll pay the fine, I'll go on down the road. But you're going to stop the lawyer from hell who's going to own you, who's going to take your house, who's going to wreck your life. And that's what we're talking about.
Very good.
Sense.
Very good. Yeah.
Kyle, so what I see here is that there's a blurring of the lines in Unbound, and even in the charismatic approach to healing and deliverance, there's a blurring of the lines of the priesthood. They don't understand the distinction between the ministerial priesthood and the lay priesthood. In other words, there's kind of more of a Protestant understanding from Luther, where he says, you know, we're all priests and we don't need a ministerial priesthood. And that's kind of crept into the charismatic renewal to the Unbound, where there's a blurring of the lines. There's no distinction between the ordained priest and the lay priesthood. Would that be a proper assessment of the problem?
I think it's a very accurate assessment, very well articulated, even more so expounded on by John Calvin, killer of Catholics. I think we need to go back and review our history a little bit. And when we speak as Catholics, when we use the term ministerial priesthood or those things, those are Protestant terms, Protestant terms that have been inserted into our language. You go back and read the Church Fathers. The priesthood is he who makes sacrifice, meaning first and foremost of himself on behalf of the Most High God. And he who is an intermediary, this idea of the priesthood of the laity, this is a very precise attack on the ordained priesthood. And I'll give you an analogy. We're married men. We're married. We're married in the church. We are configured in vocation to our wives, and grace flows through that formal vocation, that sacrament of matrimony. If I were to go shack up with somebody from the outside, that looks like marriage. It is not a conduit of grace, despite what my best intentions are. So the idea that a layperson can discharge any aspect of the priesthood outside his proper vocation, where he is the head of his domestic church, but over anyone else, and especially a woman doing these things, assuming a priestly role, this opens them up for counterattack, and the demon does it over and over and over again. So I think that when we look at that, though it looks like a priestly activity, and they may be able to get a response from a demon, it opens them up to counterattack.
Virgin Most Powerful Radio, sharing the gospel with clarity and charity.